Some may say it's hard to believe that this game is being made by the same team that is known for these games. And with this new knowledge that they do in fact come from the same studio, some may then jump to shifting blame elsewhere after years of Game Freak is lazy propaganda, and others may start crafting new narratives entirely. But what if I were to say that not only does this new development justify the last generation of Pokemon games, it promises that this is just the beginning of what the future has in store, not just for Game Freak as a studio, but Pokemon as a brand in particular, assuming that Beasts of Reincarnation does succeed. Here's why. Game Freak has taken a bit of a beating in terms of the online gaming discourse cycle this past decade or so for being lazy at worst or complacent at best after a really inconsistent generation of Pokemon games, to say the least, on Nintendo Switch. However, last month, Game Freak has revealed their brand new Fictions, formerly known as Private Division, published game Beast of Reincarnation, a post-apocalyptic action RPG set to release for Xbox Series, PlayStation 5, and PC in 2026. Predictably, a lot of people online are using this reveal as a gotcha moment for Pokemon games, but I have a different, I'd argue significantly more nuanced take that I'd like to walk you through here. The formula that the Pokemon company repeatedly used for close to 3 decades is and was killing the quality of Pokemon games, and I'd bet it's in 2 primary ways, one of which being what everyone assumes. Releasing new video games every year or even every other year with the sheer scale of Pokemon at the quality fans have begun to expect would magically spawn from thin air is unrealistic. And I think more than that, too, the monotony and mundanity that many Pokemon fans expect is suffocating a studio that clearly yearns for more. For the past year, I've been revisiting every generation of Pokemon game on stream on as close to original hardware as I can manage. Follow Watch Redirect on Twitch as that series is still ongoing. We recently started Gen 6 with the express purpose of gauging the quality of Pokemon games throughout the franchise's history. No hacks, no mods, no challenge runs, just the original games the way they were originally designed to be played. So far, this has reaffirmed to me that Pokemon fans are full of shit. That includes the ultra casual who have diluted themselves to thinking the version of the game they remember from their childhood is a reflection of reality, all the way to hardcore fans who have diluted the problems that existed in the games themselves by using emulation to speed up the game, change assets in the game, or even by simply modifying the rules of the games through things like Nuzlocke to arbitrarily elevate the quality of what was actually released. I maintain that Pokemon games have quite literally never been good. The world is just really cool and the gameplay is just tolerable enough to deal with as you experience the world. That said, the problem and therefore solution for this isn't as cut and dry as the scorned Pokemon fans on the internet like to flatten it to be. It's not something Game Freak could solve overnight, and I'd argue they've made more strides towards making Pokemon games worthy of that world in the past 8 or so years than they did in the previous 20 plus. Despite their reputation, it's clear that Game Freak wants more for themselves and the Pokemon franchise. To start with the latter, every Pokemon game they've released since 2016 has at least attempted to move the needle forward. To briefly summarize the point, Gen 7 toyed with the idea of reinventing the trainer's journey for the first time. Gen 8 began the end of fully random encounters and the catalyst for open world Pokemon, and Gen 9 has made the biggest leap forward by being the culmination of the aforementioned advancements. Argue with your mom about how necessary these advancements are to you, your friend group, or your favorite creator, or even how successful they were with critics. The series' massive influx in sales relative to the game since Gen 2 is proof enough that the masses cared way more about Game Freak at least attempting to keep Pokemon games fresh than they do them sticking the landing on those attempts. And Game Freak has literally said as much in various interviews. They know simply iterating on diehard fans' beloved formula will ultimately quietly kill their long-term success. They know the most successful long-running brands since and before Pokemon existed reinvent themselves as time goes on. And as far as their work outside of Pokemon, Game Freak have been very vocal for a while now about their desire to escape essentially being one-hit wonders. They've released several original games in the last 10 years or so. Many of them are actually really good. However, none of them have a foothold anywhere near what Pokemon was able to accomplish. That's where Beast of Reincarnation comes in. Game Freak, for the first time since Pokemon itself, has decided to partner with a new company on a brand new AAA IP to hopefully find new levels of success for a new non-Pokemon release from them, and I personally do hope they succeed. In my opinion, the pie in the sky hope is Game Freak gets a big enough success that they step away from Pokemon and hand off the majority of mainline Pokemon development to outside studios, preferably Bandai Namco if I were to pick an existing studio myself. And that's because while I believe the internet over-exaggerates about everything, Game Freak factually is not as efficient of a developer as they would need to be to maintain a high enough quality for Pokemon. Certainly not by themselves. Or the Occam's razor outcome, that is Game Freak further expanding as a company and committing more resources to all of their projects because it's clear that Pokemon is too important to them to want to give up, even if they feel shackled to Pokemon in a lot of ways at times. So yeah, I do hope that Beast of Reincarnation is a massive success and plan to do my part in making that happen, assuming it continues to look up my alley on a gameplay level. With that said, I will add I do have one reservation to talk through to fully contextualize how I feel about this game, or I guess the discourse around it relative to Pokemon. I decided to make this video specifically because of this meme. I think memes like this make the gaming landscape insufferable, and it's because they present themselves as knowledgeable on how game development works by planning the I know the names of some companies that work on some game seed without even touching on any of the nuances. And since punchy, incendiary statements travel faster and further than the more nuanced truth, the entire conversation is then forced to be anchored to a poorly thought out meme rather than actual constructive criticism. And it doesn't help that similar memes and content on the internet has made it so that most of the most vocal people on the internet are already screaming about the laziness of Game Freak. They don't care about accuracy, they care about confirmation bias and forcing false equivalences. This then further emboldens that base. The truth of the matter is, first of all, Xbox doesn't even have anything to do with the development of Beast of Reincarnation outside of landing a marketing deal that gave them the ability to be the exclusive outlet for its reveal. They didn't work on the game, they're not funding the game itself isn't even a timed exclusive to their platform. And the more nuts and bolts explanation as to why Beast of Reincarnation looks the way it does compared to the way some of the lesser Pokemon games in the eyes of the public look the way they do is because Beast of Reincarnation doesn't have the weight of Pokemon's marketing machine holding it back and is therefore given the time it needs to be created and massaged to become as impressive as possible, because that is its stated goal, which is objectively fundamentally different from Pokemon's actual needs, past or present. Beast of Reincarnation, set for a 2026 release, was announced over 2 years ago as Project Bloom. I guarantee you that it was at least in development for a year, potentially more, by the time it made it to that point. This then means this is a game that bare minimum will have had taken 5 years to make, and as an entirely new IP, is free of any of the outside coordination that comes part and parcel with mainline Pokemon game development. A lot of people have used a similar line of logic to conclude that the bottleneck now has to be Pokemon Company, and the even more dumb people conclude that it has to be Nintendo. I think this is a comical assertion because Game Freak is an independent company that owns a third of Pokemon Company. They arguably aren't being forced to do literally anything but make mainline Pokemon games Nintendo exclusive. Outside of that, they're free to do whatever the hell they want. If Game Freak wanted to take more time to make make Pokemon games, they have the sway to make that happen if they wanted to. However, making that happen can't be done overnight, and that is true for every gaming franchise, not just the transmedia juggernaut that is Pokemon. For the millionth time, Zelda took a full generation to go from what they were to Breath of the Wild, and that's a studio that has always been revered as a groundbreaking market leader. Despite the Pokemon falling off narrative, I can confidently say Pokemon has literally never been at the bleeding edge of the industry. They arguably barely hang on to the coattails of gaming at large. Nevertheless, I think Beast of Reincarnation is a good sign for Pokemon, not a dunk against it. It's an ambitious game led by a relatively new member of the studio that has specifically served on the Pokemon battle system team, and that is all I need to root for this game to succeed, because if it does well, Beast of Reincarnation will become another massive neon lit sign that Pokemon 2 could stand to be more ambitious and maybe even strive to be a market leader in more ways than just sales. I've learned that despite how loud they can be about the surface level stuff in Pokemon, very few people online really care to see Pokemon actually improve. They just want the prettiest approximation of what their nostalgia tells them Pokemon is supposed to be. And this, more than any corporation involved, to me, seems to be the biggest contributor to the glacial pace that Pokemon games have improved at up until now. Pokemon game fans are at odds with the franchise in regard to what their nostalgia tells them the franchise needs to be. They say Pokemon games just need to be a prettier version of what they were 20 years ago. Reality says they need to be much more than that if they want to stand out. Game Freak agreed with fans about the former for far too long, and now that they've finally accepted reality after years of declining sales, they're tasked with playing catch up. The last obstacle in our way now is all parties involved need to execute on the opportunity Pokemon Company has clearly set the board for. The Pokemon anime is no longer directly tied to storylines found in the games. The same is true for the card game. We have gone full years without new major Pokemon releases, with the brand still maintaining high profits through other means, and we have seen massive sales for the Pokemon games that reinvent the aforementioned formula in various ways. All there is to do now is for everyone to accept what Nintendo has already established for years now. It's way better to release one ambitious, super polished game per generation than it is to burn the candle at both ends in an attempt to release new games annually or even biannually like Pokemon has up until this point. That's the only way we get games that look and feel as big as Beast of Reincarnation feels in comparison to Pokemon. It's the only way we'll see non-Nintendo and Pokemon-centric outlets even consider a Pokemon game for a Game of the Year nomination, and it's the only way I see Pokemon maintaining its dominance as a video game adjacent brand for years to come. That's what I think. What do you think? Were you surprised by Beast of Reincarnation? Are you happy with the direction Pokemon is headed in? How do you think Legends EA plays into all of this? Let me know your thoughts on that and more in the comments down below. If you like this video, be sure to click the like button, get subscribed, and join the Discord so you know you'll see new videos and streams without relying on algorithms. And maybe check out Redirect's merch and membership site at shop.watchredirect.com, just like executive producer Trev L. Steinberg and all of these other great names you see scrolling on the screen did for merch like I'm wearing and other great perks. Okay, that's it for me. See you in the next video.